The Black Dragon's Night. Chapter 4. Generals of Dissent. Let's get straight into that. Esme sat on the tombstone, staring down the hill of the temple. Her long silver hair flowed down her back as she sat with one leg over another, as the heel of her knee-high boots rested against the stone. Her long black coat remained open, revealing her graceful, lithe body contained beneath her black vest that her breast pushed out. Even with no light from the moon or starlight, her beauty was noticeable and unnatural. She was a deadly flower that bloomed only in the darkness, and was called the Countess of the Night People. When she'd first been ordered to come and ensure that of the princess' death, she thought this would have ended much sooner, but the barrier the artifact underneath the temple had made things progress even slower. Yes, eventually it would run out of power, as they had ensured that the only one thing it needed was the sun. Once the power failed, they would swoop in and tear everyone apart, and she would remove the little princess's heart. For this to happen, she did not come alone, and knew that there was only one who could carry out such a deed. A large figure approached on the chariot, being pulled by two black nightmares. Horses that were skeletal remains, with dark blue unholy flames to form a body around them. Their glowing red eyes stared ahead as they snorted, letting the flames flare from their nostrils as their master pulled on their reins. The lightning flashed, showing off his pure black armor. The knight stood at least 9 feet tall, and he was clad in a black tattered cloak that flowed on the wind, and his face remained hidden beneath a horned helm upon his head. Glowing red eyes stared out from the slit as frost seemed to escape out of every breath. A massive blade covered in black vines and thorns that wrapped around the hilt. The broad blade was rusted and etched with symbols that drew upon hell itself, while the guard was a bull skull. His black armored taloned hand reached out, touching it, as 3 grotesque dire wolves came running from the trees. They wore spiked collars around their rotted flesh as they stood larger than normal wolves. These were the man-hunting dogs, used to chase down those who would try to escape. Their eyes were pure white, and their fangs dripped with blood and drool down their muzzles. And Esme smirked and said, "Hail to you, Lich King Thanakus. I am surprised you would join me up here in the open." His voice rattled out,
"Countess Esme, if not for you, this would not be possible. I grow weary of them pissing themselves and remaining cowardly behind those walls. Have they no brass, or is this because a woman leads them?"
"Careful now, I am a lady," Esme said, her golden eyes flashing for just a moment.
"That may be so, but you are a devil like so many of our brethren. Why has the little mortal not allowed me to spread past this point and focus on this accursed place?"
Thanakus spoke as icy fog escaped from the shadows of the helm. And Esme smirked and said, "For twofold, my brother. This goddess, Westria, brings a holy light to the people and lays claim of protect to these foolish mortals. We cannot take their souls to become stronger so long as she has presence here. Part of destroying that faith is to strike down this temple. It will weaken her resolve. Secondly, there lies a crux within the gears that drive this world. The woman who leads them is the rightful heir to the throne."
"Which means that she is a liability due to her connection to the primordial dragons,"
Thanakus said as he understood.
"And she has not awoken the slumber beast yet. We kill her to prevent a further connection to the line then."
"Yes, and for the little king who released us," Esme said with a smirk. And Thanakus then asked,
"Is it true about Halligan then?"
And Esme's eyes slanted as she flicked her hair behind her head. Only due to his own incompetence. He allowed the Black Dragon's Chosen to even get close to him. He played around with the fool instead of just outright killing him. Thanakus knew that Halligan had been far from an incompetent fool, as he understood that their sister had no love for him. That was the way it was, and always had been for the vampire family lines and the Lycan lines. Natural enemies. She put a good show on, but he knew it had bothered her to know the mutt had even been killed. Halligan was an effective killer machine, and to know that there was someone out there capable of fighting made his dark veins pump. He swore he thought he could even feel his heart actually move at the thought of fighting such a man. Then Esme said, "If given the chance, we must kill this man immediately, Thanicus. He didn't just banish him. This so-called Black Knight actually managed to kill him. I made my way through the village and asked some of those who had escaped about what happened. They said he didn't smell right and that he was dangerous."
"I doubt he would find his way here, sister. He is probably somewhere licking his wounds while chasing his tail."
Esme smashed part of the stone she sat upon, looking at Thanicus. "You fool! That is what Halligan probably thought. No, this man will be drawn here. I guarantee it. Like moth to flame, he will find his way here. This so-called Black Knight is dangerous, Thanicus. He is driven by something, and I feel the wheels of fate trying to align against us."
"He will be no match for me, sister. I will make him become one of mine. Besides, he is only a mortal. Halligan was foolish, but this shows he was the weakest of us,"
the Lich King said, as those red eyes glowed once more. Esme couldn't help but feel something deep inside of her. Was it fear? Why though? Thanicus was right. This Vahn was one mortal. The chances were slim that he would even appear. She wanted him dead though, more so than a princess down below. This man had killed one of their own, and she would make him pay for the inconvenience of the whole situation, especially with making her feel this way. She let out a sigh, saying, "I want his head." And she swore despite not being able to see the Lich's face. He was grinning at her.
"Don't worry, sister. You are the Countess, and with me by your side, we will make this world tremble beneath our feet. Do not forget, our other brothers and sisters are well aware of the situation. He won't be alive for long."
Philia stood staring out towards the hill, her arms crossed with a fur cloak draped over her shoulders. She could see the chariot sitting over, looking at them as the dead shuffled around them. Thankfully, they had not seen any that could let loose an arrow yet, or they find themselves in an even more alarming situation. An older priest who was going bald but had salt and peppered beard made his way over towards her with a hot mug of hot tea. "Milady, you need to keep yourself warm and put yourself at risk standing up here." And the princess took the mug of tea and sipped on it, looking still at the chariot. "Thank you, Brother Donovan. You can just call me Phileas at this point. How is everyone? Are their spirits holding up?" Brother Donovan was the head priest of the temple. He had served the great temple for nearly 30 years now, since the time of the old king. He had watched the young prince and princess grow up from a fledgling to the adults they had become. Like the king, Donovan was against the idea of Phileas joining the order of Wystria's blade, but that was because he knew the family secrets that were still hidden, even from Phileas and her brother. Part of that was the man who was on the throne didn't belong on it. Avadian wasn't a member of the royal family, but even Avadian's origins were a mystery to him. It was the Queen Aquiriel that had confessed to Donovan and swore him to secrecy after doing so. It was part of the reason he now overlooked the relic deep within the temple. He couldn't even speak out against the crowning of the new king, and he often wondered if the boy had something to do with the old king's demise, but he kept his silence. So long as the Sun Dragon Alcart bloodline was safe, that was all that mattered. One of the 6 primordial dragon families that were older than the gods. Now Phileas was the last, but as long as the relic remained powered, she was safe. It wouldn't last much longer, and so he could only hope that help would arrive. "You all seem so anxious, Your Highness. No matter what you say, you would always be the princess to me, my dear. I wish you could have escaped with the others." "No, my place is here, to protect the artifact," she said, unable to quit from staring at the hill as she took a sip from the mug. Donovan looked out to where she was looking and asked, "What is it, my dear? What has caught your attention?" And she shook her head, unable to explain what she had been able to feel lately. Ever since the war had ended, she had sensed something dark creeping across the land. It had made her skin crawl. especially when the church confirmed the existence of the generals of dissent. She was able to confirm that this was the evil that was spreading a hand over the land and causing her nightmares. Even now she had a feeling that they had to be behind what was happening to them now. In a nightmare, a large man kept pointing to a figure dressed in black armor that looked like a demon himself, and with a red scarf hiding his face, and long red hair flowing out behind him. He rode a massive black horse that was in the same kind of armor, and she thought she should be afraid of the man, but there was something familiar, something almost comforting about him. The man pointing at him reminded her of a lion with his long wild golden hair and beard. He had a scar across one eye, while the other was a fierce blue. He wore no shirt and only breeches with open-toed boots. And despite this, he was powerful. She could sense it as he made her tremble. And with a deep rumble of a voice he said, "Find him." And it was then that the shadows of demons erupted from the ground, trying to swallow the Black Knight. Dark purple energy flowed around the man, making him feel as if he eclipsed the sun around her. The shadows terrified her, but the man's voice rumbled like thunder again. "Find him, little one. Help him devour the shadows." It was coming more frequent, and she could swear those shadows were sitting on the hill, watching her for some odd reason. Had they come for the artifact, or were they waiting for her to emerge? I believe that the generals of the Dissent are here now. If help is coming, they may not know this and be walking straight into a trap. I wonder if the reason they haven't stormed the place is because of the artifact. You are well informed as always, but yes, more likely the artifact protects the temple, for now. However, the enemy knows the weakness of the artifact. I will not lie. We are running out of time. Donovan answered honestly with a sigh and stared back at the center of the court towards the building. Phileas turned to him and placed a hand on his shoulder with a weak smile. "You are fine, Brother Donovan. No, I figure that's why we are alive still, but we might have to fight. We will move everyone closer into the temple that way. If I am right, the barrier protecting will shrink rather than just dissolve. If it does just dissolve, we will all have the priest and priestess already in place, and we could protect everyone." Donovan let out another sigh, wishing there was an escape route, but the truth was, it was a one-way down. Even then, it was set up to ensure that no force would get their hands on the artifact. He couldn't begin to tell her now everything would collapse down, burying the artifact out of reach for at least 100 years. He looked back at her and bowed. "It will be done, Your Highness. But we will make sure to make preparations. Shall we move the horses also?" And she shook her head and said, "No, we will have some men on horses to attack, especially the pikes and halberds, since they don't seem to do damage." "Well then, I think it is time for you to get off this wall and have someone else take watch for a while. Let's head in and get you something to eat." The two turned, making their way down the ramp as two other knights made their way up. They gave a nod and slight bow. "Ma'am, we will take guard. We've already eaten and rested. You go rest up." They were young and she couldn't help but understand what the three of them were saying, as Donovan spoke up saying, "Your well-beings keep their spirits high, Your Highness. As long as you remain, I fear we have nothing to worry about. Now come, a hot meal is waiting for you." The knight stared from the shadows, watching Phileas as his opportunity had passed due to the arrival of the old man. He had his orders and knew that the demons outside were waiting for him to do his part, since they couldn't. How could he disobey his king, especially with the promise he had made, and that the Order of Blades would be his? Those that stood in his way, and it was their fault. They should have listened to him. He was an ex-soldier from the war. He had done his job. He couldn't make out what they were saying, but it didn't matter. Soon enough, he would have his chance, and it would be easy to put the blame on the dead outside. He would cut her down and drop the corpse off the side. The biggest problem was, what was he running into? It was the fact that the princess was always on guard and she was looking to the hills. She had always been a pain and seemed to rise through the rank with ease, passing a test as if she was unaffected and was constantly praised. This was supposed to be his command, but he figured because she was the princess, they had to have taken it easy on her and gave it to her. Just thinking of it made him slam his fist against the wall. He calmed his bloodlust and hatred, keeping it within himself. This was the only way he could keep her thinking she could trust him. The knight knew gaining her trust, making her rely on him. Then when he was done violating her, making her putty in his hand, that was when he would do it, cut her down. He needed to dirty her, break her, and knock her off the damn high horse. She didn't realize how much more easier she had it. Why didn't the others see it as well? Cracking his neck, he could feel bile at the thought of her lording over him, and it started to sicken him. He tried to remind himself he had to be patient. It will be over soon enough. After all, he knew something that the rest didn't. There will be no help coming, and just because he was ordered to signal the generals of the Descent about their plans, the rumors were all wrong. The king had explained that, and it was poison started by their own king's sister. After all, she was planning on forcing the current king off of his rightful place by using the blades. The king would not send an army, and he was positive that the messengers hadn't been able to escape. He was especially glad that the commoner Cruz was now dead. He had been given special privileges also, allowing his tainted blood to become a knight. The worst part was that the low-born followed the princess like a lovesick puppy. It sickened him, and he was glad that the man was now dead. He wondered if his corpse had become one of the ones below. He chuckled and said in a deep gravelly whisper, "Good riddance, little dog. Don't worry, I'll be sending your little master shortly along to join you." His despise was rising again, and he felt he needed to do something about it. Maybe train or even take one of the priestesses, or they were easy to seduce. Anything to take the edge off of it. He pondered for a moment. Who else could he kill before he killed her to draw her close to him? The thought made him smile and whistle as he continued towards the building from the shadows. Many of the other knights greeted him as he re-emerged to join them by the bundles of fire. Yes, very soon, all he desired would be his, like it was supposed to be. Chapter 5. Through the Woods. Let's get straight into that. Slack didn't understand how he had ended up in the situation he was now in. Part of him thought he should run off, but the Black Knight that he learned was named Vahn made him second guess that. He had found out, though, that his life was far better in this situation. He was taken care of. The extra horse of supplies and the foreigner were a better boss. Teo, he had discovered, came from the southwest, but the way he dressed said a lot. He had seen traders from the Mycetic kingdom, and that dressed very similar to him. All that was required of Slag was to bathe and actually take care of the horse that they were bringing with the supplies for the temple that they were heading for. Hell, he had even been paid 100 gold in advance. Still, it did bother him. After so many years of being a bandit and actually treated with some level of respect. Since he had been young, he'd never been welcomed anywhere, not even by his own family. And during their travels so far, he was able to gather the situation was a lot more dangerous than Teo or Vahn had let on. The talk was that the dead was coming back from the grounds and were killing anyone who entered into the land. A bloody army of the dead. How was that even possible? It almost blew his mind, thinking such a thing was blown out of proportion, and men drinking around fire told each other. But everyone was taking it seriously, especially when he looked over to the Black Knight, who was always training. Every time he looked upon his face or even saw him training, his fellow bandits had been cut down with ease, but it was that look he saw on Vahn's face while they had died. It wasn't something that anyone could forget. The look as if they were nothing and the pleasure behind it. No, there was no love for him, but he couldn't hate the man. He could respect Vahn for the warrior he was, but it was very different for the other 3 blades that had come with them. It was obvious that they wished the Black Knight wasn't there, or even Teo. The two obviously didn't give a damn what they thought for the most part. This became even more apparent when they separated from the main army. They were on their own, travelling through the woods, moving quicker than the main army did. It had been almost a week of them moving through the woods, and halfway through that, he hadn't seen the sun. Dark clouds always remained, unmoving despite the wind that was blowing around. This put him on edge and caused the hair on the back of his neck to raise up. Slag also took note that the three knights were at ease versus Teo and Vahn.
So, why the two of you are here? Why bring a coward like me along? You know I could bolt at any given moment of trouble.
Vahn didn't hesitate as he looked over at Slag.
You could, but I think that'd be a really bad idea. First, who gives a lowly henchman a chance to be treated better than a servant? And second, since we entered this place, you're probably safer being right next to Teo.
Now, Vahn. Yes, he smells bad. Dresses really badly. Kinda on the scrawny side, and not to mention having a really terrible haircut. But now that I think of it, you should probably just think of just shaving your head. Though it won't do much for your face, since it's the only face that a mother could love. But I do believe in you. I think you have some fortitude to you, and I can tell your instincts are spot on. And Slag looked aghast and couldn't believe how much Teo tore him down. Sure, he wore only a vest with no shirt, but he thought it made him look intimidating, especially while wearing fingerless gloves. This was just an assent to his look. What he wanted people to think that he wasn't someone to be feared, but he knew it made him look ridiculous. But to take a swipe at his face and hair, a man needed to at least have some pride.
Piss off, pretty boy. You do realise I could just take off in the middle of the night and just sell everything you both own, right?
Both Teo and Vahn couldn't help but chuckle by his response. Lighting another cigarette, Teo replied after taking the drag.
Don't take it to heart there, Slag. Besides, I'm pretty sure you'll be eaten by whatever's going bump in the night. That, or you might have to just outrun those three.
Not you, Vahn.
Slag was a bit surprised.
I'm sure. Not gonna risk my ass going after you in that dark. That would just get me killed.
Vahn replied, but wasn't really paying attention to Slag though. The first part of Teo's cryptic words rang true for the Black Knight. There was something not right and something was out there. It bothered him that the three blades, Conrad, Cruz and Holden, were riding as if there wasn't something there. This was already against the plan that Teo had come up with, as there was only supposed to be 5 of them. No, Conrad would not yield to that plan. The reality was they didn't need any of them except Cruz. The main army was the main distraction as they were marching towards the first outpost on the open road. From there, this would hopefully draw the dead towards them and distract them so they could find the source that was raising the dead. Their job was supposed to take care of that, so that way they could find the general of dissent who was responsible for all of this chaos. It was Conrad who had insisted that he and his right hand, man Holden, were to come along. This commander didn't trust them to handle the job, nor did he trust Cruz with Vahn. He still saw the knight as the same young man who was once under his command. This was a young man who raised hell, always fought with guards in town, and often run afoul with the higher-ups. He was a handful, but he could fight, and when it came to battles they fought, he rose to the challenge. The man he now saw was very different. He avoided Vahn since they had left together, especially since Conrad had spoken to him. The three remained close to one another, and he often caught them looking at him every so often. Conrad and Holden had nothing but hate, but Cruz had a look that cut Vahn deep. There was a level of distrust there, completely different from Oaken. It all stemmed from that day, and Vahn thought about the others. He wondered if they had been shaken by what happened that day. He wished he could explain why, but he didn't think the boy would believe him. He now started to wonder if he had revealed he was alive, if things would have been different. That voice echoed in his mind again. That was wishful thinking. He already knew they would have all been killed. It was better that Cruz belonged to the Blades, and he was close to the princess. He was there protecting her, but he knew something was wrong about Conrad. He was starting to lead the young man down a dangerous path. The man was feeding him a line and controlling him, as he had already overheard what the commander had told him, that he wasn't supposed to speak to them.
The only information that Teo and him had gotten was that they were headed to an outpost hidden in the woods, and that from the outpost it would be a hard day's ride to reach the temple of Asmoria. Well, that was a lie, though. The Black Knight knew that much. If it weren't for Teo asking him to come, he would have already headed out on his own to the temple once he had found out about it. This was about more than just the possible general of dissent. It was also about the princess. Being drawn from his thoughts, as he could have sworn he saw something moving in the bush. Whatever it had been following them since they had gotten closer to the so-called outpost was moving in. His twin eyes glowed with that green as the energy started to flow through him. He pulled back on the reins of Sleipnir and pulled the mighty black horse to slow its pace so that he was closer to Teo. Teo blew out smoke and was acting carefree as normal as he remained on guard, looking around. Even now, Vahn could see Slag moving closer to them. Everything was so quiet, despite whatever was moving around out there.
Whatever is out there is planning on making its move soon.
Of course it is, Teo said, leaning forward on his horse, and taking another drag on his smoke as the smoke ran across his face. The real question is, do those three know that? Or are they really that oblivious to what's been going on? I mean, they think we're dumb for sure, thinking we don't know that small little platoon has been following us, keeping back just far enough to be out of distance. Vahn sighed and looked up into the clouds, wondering if the rain would come soon.
What kind of idiots believe that this place hasn't already been compromised? I mean, come on. We're close enough to where the dead has been killing everything in that area. You would think a rider would have already met us out here, if it wasn't. You think it's some of the dead things tracking us?
And Teo shook his head and said, not a clue, but I think whatever it is, has lost its patience with us. Speak of the devil, looks like our new home is coming right up. Talk about perfect timing. Conrad stopped his horse with the three shouting back. We make camp out of the outpost. From there, we will head off to the temple in the morning.
Oh, hell, Spells. You're pretty dumb, ain't you?
Vahn said, sliding off Sleipnir's side. He had had enough of the incompetent commander and was sure as hell not going to take his orders. He instead proceeded to start placing his armor on as Conrad shouted with a dumbfounded look. Conrad pulled his horse towards Vahn and growled out, What are you doing? I gave you an order. We are headed off to the outpost now.
Piss off,
Vahn replied, pulling on his chestplate.
You want to die? Be my guest, but I intend on going down fighting. And don't forget there, Commander, you don't have any authority over me. I am not a blade. I am here of my own free will.
Cruz let out an exasperated sigh, stating, Lord Vahn, this is a mission for the Blades of Wystria, and if you can't respect that, then maybe you should leave. We don't need you here to interrupt this important quest with your cowardliness. Vahn finally understood why Cruz had looked at him the way he did. He wondered if he truly believed that or wanted to believe that because he was told to. Cruz looked away immediately as if he was regretting what he had said, when Howden shouted back,
Forget it, Conrad. Once a coward, always a coward. I told you it was a bad idea to bring a man like him along. Should have done this the way you wanted to in the first place.
I don't know what's going on through your head, but Vahn is far from a coward. You aren't using your brains very well and are proving to be a bit of a musclehead. You think that place is safe? Teo said as he slipped off his own horse, making a motion towards the outpost. Where are your holy brothers and sisters? Hell, there isn't even a fire burning in there, as there isn't even smoke coming from the chimney. He then helped the knight to place on his armor, which was mostly done, since Vahn had already been wearing his fleur with the black and red chaps. It looked as if they were torn, covering spiked pulleen and greaves. It didn't leave much else that had to be placed on. It all fit on over his torn red scarf with ease, and for the first time, they all got to see what he looked like in full armor. They had all seen him when he wasn't resting, wearing his black talon gauntlets. But it was like he had completely transformed into a different being. The black pauldrons had 2 spikes on each one, which connected to the black breastplate and gorget The placard was a sturdy black leather, looking as if it was tied to his body, with 3 silver ridges along either side of his stomach. On the back of each counter was also spiked. Like Sleipnir's barding set, it also had intricate silver lines running along, with the tips and edges, with intricate etchings on them also. The last thing he did was don the black open-faced ornate helmet that had 4 horns pointing back. He slipped it on as it covered his face in shadows, and he pulled up the red scarf over the lower part of his face. He reached over to the saddle of Sleipnir's side. He didn't grab the elegant curved blade, but the kite shield free onto his back. It was like the rest of his armor, black with a silver lining running along it, leading to a red gem. He then yanked free the massive 2-handed curved black blade. It looked like a wide single-edged blade. The hilt was protected by what looked like an intricate basket hilt that twisted around a dark green gem embedded into the hilt and blade. Slag let out a whistle and said riding up to him, "Bloody hell, man. If we had come up on you dressed like that, we would have avoided you in the first place. You look like some kind of demon knight. Oh, if I was you guys, I'd listen to what the boss is trying to tell you, snobs. Might save your life." "Whatever, bandit. You should have been hung and quartered by now, you thief," Holden said, spitting on the ground, but looked nervously at Vahn. "Just because you put on some kind of fancy armor doesn't change what we know about you." "Ah, forget them," Conrad said, turning his horse towards the outpost. "Come, Cruz. Let us get to the outpost now." "Stupid knights. You would think they would use their brains for a change," Slag growled out. And Vahn shook his head and replied, "It is not stupidity but pride. That is one of the most common sins of the Order of the Blade. A lot of them let their pride get a hold of them." "I've had about enough of you, coward!" Howland shouted as he started to turn back towards him, when something broke the tree line and was already bearing down on the back of his horse's neck. They all heard the crunch as a large bear's powerful jaw bit down and then twisted its body. And with a heave, both Howland and the horse flew across into the field and then turned to the rest of them, letting out a massive roar. The bear wasn't right at all, as part of its skull and body were exposed, revealing the green blood dripping from it. Where there should have been eyes, it was nothing but sunken hollows, with 2 pinpoint pricks of red light that acted as eyes. And as it let out another roar, green fluid flew from its muzzle, and it focused in on the other 2 knights. Slag was struggling to keep the 2 horses under control while the knights were thrown from their own horses. Sleipnir merely snorted and stomped his massive hooves against the ground, pawing at the ground and ready to fight. Teo reached behind his back and pulling a scroll out and tossed it to Vahn, shouting, "Use this. It will take out Zumbo there for us and send it back to hell." And he was already unsnapping the cases on his side, revealing the talisman papers inside of them. Yanking one free from the case, his eyes flashed, revealing a strange design of the talisman. It had red and green lines running along the edges, while a large unknown character sat in the center. Teo's attention was focused on the edge of the woods, as it looked as if a wolf emerged running at them, jaws snapping. Like the bear, parts of it were missing, and the same green blood was dripping from its wounds. Without even hesitating, he brought 2 figures to his lips and threw the talisman like a playing card at the wolf. And as he spoke, his voice became distorted, and no one could understand what he was saying. The paper exploded as it burned away, and lightning bolt cracked out, replacing the paper. It struck the wolf, causing the entire body to light up as it travelled through its body, reducing it to ash afterwards. Its hands were already reaching for both sides, as he could sense more coming his way. Vahn, on the other hand, slammed the massive blade into the ground and unsealed the scroll. His eyes lit up as the green glow flashed for a moment. He mumbled under his breath something as the wind whipped through the forest, causing the red hair to whip around along his tattered scarf. He slammed the scroll closed and threw it as hard as he could, causing it to sail through the air. It struck the bear between the eyes with a thud and fell to the ground. The bear looked momentarily confused at what had happened, and then let out a mighty roar, ignoring the other 2 knights on the ground. What the hell was that? Don't tell me you don't know how to use a scroll! How do you not know how to use a damn scroll? Teo shouted, surprised at what had happened, as Vahn just stared at the bear, not answering at first.
No. I was never very talented when it came to using magic. My brother had a knack for that kind of thing, and I'm good at one thing, and I do that pretty damn good.
Vahn started ripping the massive blade out from the ground, letting out a roar back at the bear, issuing forth his own command. Teo was smiling, and even if he couldn't see Vahn's face, he could tell the Black Knight was enjoying this too. Teo spit his cigarette out, and his hands flew out as the wolf started to rush out of the woods from multiple directions, straight for Slag and Teo. But the wizard was already speaking in that strange dialect, distorted and peculiar again, throwing multiple papers in different directions. The papers ignited into flames again as Teo smacked his hands together and became multiple massive balls of blue flames, striking the wolves dead where they stood. Their bodies were lifted from the ground, set on fire, reducing the walking corpses to nothing but ash. The bear charged at Vahn, who was rushing to face it head-on, and Cruz shouted, "Look out, Vahn!" while trying to free his own sword from his side, along with Conrad. They were moving as if trying to chase after the bear, afraid of Vahn had lost his mind. Holden finally got out from his horse and was pulling up his axe free from its saddle, and then shouted, "The fool has lost his mind because of fear. Oh, he's going to get himself killed!" None of that mattered to Vahn as he took a deep breath in, feeling the power flow through his muscles as he brought the giant blade up and over his head. All he could see was those eyes staring at him, with the intent to kill him, wanting to rip him apart, and he responded in kind, driving the massive blade down in a split second. And as he drove the black blade down, it didn't matter that the hide was thick. The blade didn't just bite as it sliced through, cutting the massive bear in two while driving it into the dirt. And as the blade hit the ground, it impacted the ground, and Vahn let out his breath as green blood exploded everywhere, with organs falling out onto the ground. The red pinpoints in the eyes faded as it hit the ground. More dead wolves charged through from the line, coming at them, and they were headed straight for Teo. The three knights were still struck in awe, still from the bear being cut in half, while Slag felt as if his heart was caught in his throat, with fear from the wolves. The faint click noise resounded through the clearing as Vahn was already appearing, heading straight for them. The massive black blade was no longer in his hand as he was holding a black double-edged long blade. It came fast, cutting through one wolf, and then he pulled the shield free from his back. The massive curved portion of the sword was still embedded in between the bear, but he had revealed the double blade hidden within it. Slag was surprised as he watched the shield come up, bashing the beast to the side. The other three knights moved closer and drew their own weapons up, smashing into the wolves. And that was when Teo shouted in anger, "I've had enough of this! Everyone get close to me now! Keep them off me and buy me some time!" Reaching in, he pulled a cigarette out, lighting it before his hands were reaching into both cases while he took a drag on it. Pulling the talismans out from the case, he threw them up into the air as Slag pulled the two horses close to Sleipnir and the others. Teo then pulled the cigarette from his lips and slammed his hands together again, speaking in the strange language again. His voice again began to distort as leaves and wind started to whip around them. And while this was happening, a dead stag rushed at Teo, but was stopped with Vahn's shield. Even Sleipnir was getting in on the action, as he bucked and slammed his hooves into the intruding dead animals. Cruz's rapier danced about, striking and dashing about into the animals. Conrad was cutting his own long blade, and Holden was bringing the axe head down on another wolf. More were already trying to head their way towards them.
"Hell spells, man! Get on with it!"
Vahn shouted, swinging the black blade around and cutting another beast down. Teo's eyes shot open as his eyes lit up purple, and the talisman exploded in flames, being drawn by the wind into a vortex. The flaming tornado became a raging inferno that pulled upwards into the sky, splitting the heavens in half. Teo then thrust both hands out to his side as the raging inferno pressed out, burning all of the undead beasts into ash and forced the dark, ominous clouds to part. Teo then dropped to one knee as the flame extinguished itself, leaving no trace that it had passed through the area at all. He was exhausted, and Vahn let out a sigh of exhaustion himself. He turned looking down at his friend, saying,
"You couldn't have pulled that off a little earlier."
And pulling the cigarette to his lips, he took a drag, laying back and blowing smoke out. Staring up at the blue that was now slowly vanishing, and he let out a sigh. He forced himself to stand and dusted himself off while he said, "Oh, and deny you little farm with a big, dumb and ugly thing over there. Besides, we're alright for now, but not Holden. I think that he may have shit himself over the bear." And Holden growled out, "What was that, you little bastard? Are you trying to mock me?" The massive man was already trying to clear the distance between them. His hand flew out, trying to grab him by the front of Teo's robe. It's like noticed that Vahn didn't even move to protect the wizard, but he watched why that was the case. Teo's hand shot upwards, palm open, striking him on the chin and pushing the head up and back. It was followed by his left leg sweeping out behind Holden's leg at the same time. The world spun for Holden as he flipped through the air, as he then felt himself hit the ground. Conrad pointed the blade at Teo while growling out, "Enough! Holden, quit screwing around with the wizard. We should be on guard in case more of those things show back up."
"Oh, spells, man. I am positive that we are good for now."
Vahn then looked down at Holden, saying,
"By the way, he was right, wasn't he? You shit your britches, didn't you?"
Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Certainly another one. Wow. I hope you guys enjoyed that one as much as I. And of course, huge thank you to the incredible author, KB.Michaels, for penning this superb update and return series, exclusive to the DMT Forest Affair channel. KB, absolutely smashing it from the get-go. More riveting than J.R. Tolkien, if you ask me. I will do my best to get the next chapters out as soon as possible. And of course, thank you so much for your patience over the last couple of months. As ever, I hope you're well and happy, your family and friends alike, and life is treating you well. Well, guys and girls as ever, you know the drill. Please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. Why, it really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid crew. Now, if you think you can pen something of this extreme caliber of penmanship, then please do get in touch with me at the contact email, which is, as on screen, contactthedeadone@gmail.com. I really look forward to hearing from you. I hope you all had a fantastic week at work or school, or perhaps you received your exam results. Whatever it is that you do, I hope you're enjoying it and are giving it your all. But above all, guys, remember, be safe, not sorry. He was clad in a black tattered cloak that flowed on the wind, and his face remained hidden beneath horned. "Fuck you." And he was clad in a... Conrad pulled his horse towards Vahn and growled out, "What are you doing? I gave you an order. We are headed off to the outpost." The black pauldrons had 2 spikes on each one, which connected to the black breastplate, while he took a drag on it. Pulling the talismans out from the case, he threw them up into the air. The slag pulled the 2 horses close to Sleipnir and the others. Teo then pulled the cigarette from his lips and slammed his hands together again.
So when are you done?
In about 5 minutes. Speaking